I put this art piece up here because it keeps y'all's reflection from being on there. Because when Lily's here, they can see her and they don't watch me. They just look at Lily all the time. So
it's in the kitchen. I saw it on the. That's very pretty.
She's got to have her notes. All right, we're waiting for Facebook to push this out, and then we'll get started. I've never been a really good note taker, but I used to take recordings with me when I went to conference, little recorders, and I recorded what was saying. So, all right, we have some people with us, so we are going to start. And if you were watching last week, anybody that was doing a live Facebook video at 10 a.m., somehow or another, Facebook did something, and all of our recordings stopped. And so we had to go back and do a new one, so there's a two-part. And like I told them last week, when that stopped, everybody that was watching went to the bathroom, went to the kitchen, and the ushers couldn't get them back in. But we did the second part, and then I combined mine on YouTube. So it's available on Facebook. You can see it on YouTube. I encourage you to watch it. It's very important. I believe most of everything we teach is important. But this really answered a lot of questions about soul, spirit, and body, all been one, all been the same thing. And it got a lot of reactions, and a lot of people wanted to know if I believed in the Trinity or if I believe that we are a spirit and soul and body. And I just put on there what's important is what you believe. If you want to hear what I believe, come to class or go to the class because it's available. But you can't answer that question in just one or two posts, and then people get all upset. What you need to know is how we came up with these answers. You need to hear the explanation. One of the posts that I put on the other day, or yesterday, in fact, is, if you're going to, and I didn't type it just like this, but if you're going to go to college or even high school and you don't go to the classes, it does you no good to ask the teacher to give you the answer because you don't know how you got it. And some of you are pretty close to my age, most of you are, but do you remember when you went to school and you had a math book and it had all the equations, but in the back was the answer? Did you ever go back there, Norma? I did. Well, somebody needed to tell you. Yeah, in the back of the book, all the answers were there for each. Well, the books we had were at Southeast, so every page had all your questions, and you had to write them down on a piece of paper. But in the back, it had the answers, and I thought, well, that's cool. All I need to do is memorize the answers. But Donna can tell you I'm not good at memorizing. But unbeknownst to me, when you take the test, it's not knowing the answers, it's knowing how to get the answers. So you can ask me all kinds of questions, and I don't mind. And I'll do my best to answer you. But the truth is you need to listen to the teachings so we can see how we came up with this. And I can tell you this without a shadow of a doubt, and I know Kay Fairchild could say the same thing. It's taken us years to come up with these answers. Because as we've studied, we've come up higher and higher and higher and higher. And so it's very hard to just give you an answer without spending some time with you, say, this is how we came up with this. Does that make sense? And so I say attend class. And we have hundreds, I have hundreds and hundreds, I know Kay does too, of videos on Facebook that when I begin to wake up to these things, they're all there. So if somebody wants to start in the beginning, then you can go way back to 100 or 200 videos and listen 24 hours a day and you'll get there real quick. Amen. Is that okay? So we're glad all of you are there. Hi, Joanne. Glad you're here with us. I'm teaching, basically from what many people say on the internet. It's chapter 8. It's the greatest chapter in all the Bible in Romans. I had never heard that said before until I started studying. And as I've said before, Brother Garner taught 7 pillars of truth, which a lot of other people did in the early 90s and, before that, and people still are doing that. Well, in chapter 8, I discovered that there's 38 powerful pillars of truth. And so we're going through each verse, sometimes 2 verses, and giving you different pillars here. And so today we want to talk about quickened, made new, and new creation. Quickened, made new, and new creation. Donna can tell you when we studied under Brother Garner, quicken was one of the major things that we talked about. I remember we got so excited about Brother Garner's teachings on 6 steps to the throne, Paul's system of truth, Paul's pillar of truth, and we majored on that. And we talked about crucified, died, buried, quickened, raised, and seated, and most of the people in the church couldn't say that. So one time I offered $20 to the first person that could stand up and say what 6 steps for the throne. And everybody freaked out and nobody could. So we say CDBQRS, and sometimes people put that on their car tags. So it was really a major teaching out of Paul's system of truth. But the truth is, it came from a penal substitutionary doctrine. And so as we continue to study, and I know other people have, and continue to listen, we found out that that was a doctrine put in there by the translators of our Bible. And it's just plainly not true. And we know that Jesus did not have to die on man's behalf because man was not bad because they did bad things. They were still holy, they were still righteous. And so I'm not going to get into that because I want to teach this. I wrote enough, and the studying this, we're going to be in Romans 8:10. The studying of this it really blessed me yesterday, and actually day before yesterday, and I couldn't quit writing. There's so much in the Bible about quicken when you find out what it really means that you can search it out. So I ended up at 21 pages. And so I hope you got some good rest today, but I'm not going to teach all of it. I'm going to teach half this Sunday and half the next Sunday. So make sure you can be here or be watching this so you can hear the rest of it next Sunday. So let's read Romans 8:10 through 11 through my translation book. Verse 10 says, "Since the holy breath of Father is in every part of your being, you're delivered from the due-to-be laws to experience life. Holy breath in you is your life source, genuine character, and nature." Verse 11, "You also need to see the same holy breath in and as Jesus awakened and aroused Jesus up from death, resides and is at rest in you. The same holy breath aroused our Master, Comforter, Messenger, Jesus, from death, also revitalizes your body that because of your false awareness was liable to die. You can experience a vitalizing or a quickening because Father eternally dwells in you. And the truth is, your body is whole, your body is perfect, who you really are. There is no death in you, who you really are. It's our awareness. And so whatever a man thinketh or whatever a person believes in their awareness, that's their realization. And so you know yourself, you've met people that believe they're sick when they're not sick, and they talk about it, they get out of bed, and next thing you know, they are sick, right? Yes. And so our belief system is really important. And so powerful pillar of truth number 8, your holy breath in you can and will embolden life in you. The very Spirit of God in you is powerful, right? And it can and will, but we have to allow it. The Bible says, let this same Spirit or let this same breath that was in Jesus Christ be in you. And so let is something we have to do. And to be in you has to be a relationship, if you would. You know, I let you guys in my house. If I didn't let you in, then we would not fellowship with one another. We would not draw from one another today. So literally we had to let that, but in order for you to let that, we have to know that we do have the very Spirit of God in us, just like Jesus did. I don't like to use the word spirit much because that's what most people are familiar with, but literally spirit means breath, and I call it holy breath. So question, do you believe what Jesus did, and drawing from his inward life, the power to quicken his body, you can also do? And if your answer is no, or I'm not sure, then you will not be able to. And there are many people that do not believe that. They put, because of the Trinity doctrine, they put Father, Son, Holy Spirit as 3 separate beings up so high that we can never be like them. And we are just servants, if you would. And so that's the problem. And until recently, many of us have never heard or taught who we are and just how powerful our inward life is. I was never taught that growing up whatsoever for many, many years. I was in a church for 38 years, and I was never taught who I am. I was taught who I'm not, right? And so in John 14:12, Jesus said, "Truly, truly, I lay forth to you that trusting your spiritual well-being in what I have shared with you, the works and the acts that I do, likewise you do." And I paraphrase that somewhat, but he was saying that that we can do everything that he did, and he also said more, did he not? Now, I don't mean necessarily go around doing signs and wonders. I think it's more like we can live the way he did. Because he was the way, he was the truth, he was the life. He came to show people the true life because they were not living Zoe life. And so Jesus' mandate in this world during the age he dwelt in was not to be mankind's physical healer, but that's all they wanted. Correct? Larry, you and I grew up, and maybe you guys did, but remember the tent revivals and all that stuff, and people were going to get something all the time. They needed healings, and the preacher would say, bring your lame, and they would have wheelchairs and crutches and all that stuff. And I believe a lot of people tapped in and received healing, but that's not what we're to come to the Father for. We come to the Father for relationship. We come to the Father to realize and learn who we are and learn that Father is our source. And so he came to be this example of a true manifesting Son of Father. He came to be a comforter messenger, and that's who he was. And he was the greatest there ever was. So he was to heal man's awareness. When he came to save that which was lost, people ask me all the time about that. Well, it says he came to save that which was lost. It didn't say he came to save the people. What was lost was man's awareness of Father from the very foundation. Yeah. So I wish I wouldn't do this when I teach. I get all choked up. Maybe I'm talking too fast.
No, it's just when you talk.
So even when he was 12, we know this, even when he was 12 years old, he was so in tune with his divine mind that he confounded the doctors of the law in the temple, and it said they marveled at his wisdom. His mother came looking for him, and he said to her, do you not know the one Father exists in me? You don't know that yet? Because she did. She knew it because she taught him. A messenger came and said, keep this young man apart, away from religion. And she knew that. But she was still concerned for her boy. So Jesus claimed, and I like this, he claimed that never did he have an independent thought separate from Father. Wouldn't you like to be able to say that? Yes. I've never had an independent thought separate from Father, or speak a word separate from Father, or did an act consciously, even in his most relaxed moments. Everything he said, everything he did, he was completely dependent on Father, and he listened to Father. He said, I didn't do anything that Father, I don't see Father do, I don't hear anything. And how in the world can he do that? By contact. By spending time, by listening, not just come to church on Sunday mornings. We've always thought all of our life, we go to church on Sunday mornings, some of us go on Wednesday mornings, and we're doing really good. But what do we do the rest of the week? What are we exposed to, if you would, the rest of the week? And so he stayed in contact, and he declared most insistently that every thought and word and act of his life was the thought, the word, and the action of Father. And I sat in my office for a long time and talked to the Lord. I said, Father, help me to do that. I don't want to think anything that you don't think. I don't want to dream anything that's not of you. I tell Donna, I don't know if it's the medicine I'm taking or what, but I dream some of the wildest dreams that wake me up and bother me. They're not horrible, but they just keep coming, and they make whole movies. And when I lay in bed at night, I'm saying, Father, be my dreams. Be my dreams. Bypass whatever this is that's doing that, because I want to hear the thoughts of Father. And I do. Father speaks to me often. When I write, I hear Father's voice, but I want every thought to be that way. And Donna would love that if that was true, wouldn't you, Donna? So his consciousness and his subconsciousness were entirely in tune with the Father. And the subject matter of all his conversation was what he learned from Father. And through Father dictating every word to him, he was able to speak with great authority. And I'll always remember around 2004 when I was translating Brother Garner's teachings and learning so much. There came a time when Father said, I can stop that. And I heard the words explicitly, I will dictate to you what to say. I will dictate to you what to write. Literally, the word is superimposed. I will lay that upon your thoughts. I will lay that on your awareness. And so from that point on, my teaching changed tremendously and my writing changed tremendously. And like Kay said of herself, Spirit speaks to me and I listen attentively. And we can all do that. And I'm sure every one of you do that in many ways. So Jesus always spoke of Father being in him, as him. And he said, believe me not that I am in the Father and the Father's in me. And that's in John 14:11. And then he said, he that sent me is in me. The Father has not left me alone, for I always do those things that agree with Father. And that's in John 8:29. Those are pretty stout statements, aren't they? I always do what's agreeable with Father. And then the visible form of Jesus then was indwelled by Father utterly with a full divine mind, in contact with his divine mind, and able to walk out his divine mind. And so the divine mind of Father indwelled in all forms also, not just in Jesus, but everybody was there. The divine mind was in them too, but they just didn't know. So Father is everywhere at once, and in everywhere, and everyone at once. That's that omnipresence of Father. And the truth is, we are too. Because when we really learn how to live out of who we are, and we have that, we're walking in the cool of the day, that means to experience it, then there is no distance whatsoever. It's not necessary that my physical body has to travel somewhere, but I very much believe that I don't have to be somewhere to speak to somebody and to minister to somebody and to help somebody. Many times people call me and ask me to pray for them, and I'll tell them, well, I'm there with you right now. And so I speak to them, or I write to them, or whatever. So Scripture distinctly teaches that Father's holy breath indwells in the body of each individual. And when I say body, I'm speaking of the sound whole. We are, as I taught last week, and people really need to hear it, but the word soul, the word breath, and the word body all translate breath. Every one of them do. And they're the same thing. There's only one meaning for them. So what did Paul say? Know you not that you are the temple of God? And a lot of people would say no. That literally we are the dwelling place of God. In my Father's house there are many dwelling places. If it were not true, I would have told you so. And then he said, I go to a place that where I am, you will be. And he went to the cross is what he did. He's not up there building mansions for people. There are people that still believe that. That's been a long time. I'm sure Jesus is ready to retire, aren't you? Can you imagine that, Larry? For over 2,000 years, you're up there building mansions for people? But people do believe that. But he was going to a place that we could see something, that we could be aware of something, that we could understand something, that where he was in his awareness, we would be in our awareness too. Because he wanted man to live the way he did on this planet. So the word temple in the Greek is naos, and it means to dwell. And it's from Herion, which is a sacred place, a whole place. Know you not that you are sacred? Know you not that you are whole? That's what he's saying. Jesus said, I forget the address for it, but he said, many are called in the King James, but few are chosen, which that never made sense to me. And so I looked it up. The word many is all, and the called is holy, or saint, which means holy. And it said, so all are holy, but few choose to live that life. And we know why. It's because they haven't been taught, or they didn't study and show themselves approved. None of us did. So the Greek expression used by Jesus, they're very exact. He said, the Father who sent me, he gave me a commandment or a specific order, what I should say, a word, and what I should speak, and the subject matter, and even the lightest conversation. And that's what really got me some. Is even the lightest conversation, really, we need to stop and think before we open our mouth. Does this represent the Father? And I'm not trying to condemn people for doing things, but we can learn this, and we can always stop before we open our mouth, no matter what it is. And I try to do this with Donna, is before I open my mouth, is this going to edify my wife? Is this really important? I mean, last night she lost her remote control. And I had to control myself. It can be just a little bitty thing, you know. Like, you always lose the remote control. And I always had this joke with her once, and it happened once, but I said, if I ever find the remote control in the refrigerator, I'm putting you in a rest home. And I'm telling you, within about a month, she left it in the refrigerator. But I looked for her. She took my remote control. She always takes mine when she loses hers. But I looked all over this house for her. I looked in the bathroom, I looked in the bedroom, I looked everywhere for her. And this morning I got up and it was sitting on the arm of that sofa right there. Because it wasn't where it was supposed to be, and so I couldn't see it. So I just had to tell that funny on myself. But really, isn't that important? If we could just learn to... Larry's... It's a big deal to me. She has her remote control of the TV. I have my remote control. Don't touch my remote control. But, Larry, if we could just keep this in the forefront of our mind before I open my mouth. Is this going to be edifying? And does it represent the Father? Those are so easy, right? And you may slip up, but guess what you do? You keep doing it. And you keep doing it. Before long, Father's voice controls everything that comes out of your mouth. Father's voice controls your thoughts. And that's really what I see in this part of the list. This is what I want. Even my lightest conversation doesn't reflect the Father. Donna, quit pointing your finger at me. So, Jesus' statements there, they're fundamentally key to living a quickening and an abundant life. So we need to allow Father's voice to guard over us, and I've said this many times, guard what I see, guard what I hear, and guard what I say, guard what I do. I have to allow that, correct? So Jesus brought healing to people who sought help. Yes, he did that. However, he often said, your faith has made you whole, which means sozo, meaning safe, deliver, protect, or quit. So in and of himself, he did not do the healing. He was depending on Father flowing through him. And the word quicken is referenced 13 times in Scripture, 12 times in Psalms, and 1 time in Romans. And in Psalms, David used the Hebrew word chayah, C-H-A-Y-A-H, and it means to live or to revive. To live or to revive. And in Romans 8:11, Paul used the word, and I can't pronounce it very well, but it's dasaphoia, and it means vitalize, to vitalize. And so we find the word quicken 7 times, 2 in Psalms, and the rest is in 1 Corinthians, Ephesians, and Colossians, and 1 Peter. So the words translated in the above books all carry the same meaning, except for in Ephesians and Colossians, and it's called hath quickened together. When you look that up, hath quickened together. And then it also means to reanimate or reanimate co-jointly with. And so Jesus lived for 33 and a half years in Jerusalem and area, and never one time before he suffered this judgment and has been murdered by the religious people was he sick or was he weak. Why is that? Because he was living out of this quickening life. And we already have the quickened life. We don't need Father to quicken us. We already have it. We just need that awareness of what's inside of it. If that same Spirit, well, his Spirit was alive and functioning. Your Spirit is never dead, but to him, his Spirit was a reality to him. I think we can say this all the time, but people leave and just go back to living a physical conscious life. Would you agree with me? And because I can call you in about 2 weeks or a week and say, what did I say last Sunday? I don't know, but it was really good. I'm not talking about you guys, but that happens a lot. But this word quicken means to enliven. And so Jesus knew this power within him superseded sickness and disease. And that's why we say, I don't deny these diseases that are attacking my body, but I defy their right to take me out. Right. I defy their right. They do not have a right. And there's reasons why it's happened. And our generations, we know a lot of them, the foods we've eaten, the things that we've taken into our bodies that we shouldn't have, whatever, that can cause sickness and disease to show up later in life. But still, the Spirit of God is much more powerful than that. And so what did Jesus do? Well, he rebuked the fever in a woman, and it subsided. That's in Scripture. I've got it listed here if you need to know the Scriptures. But Jesus brought people back to the right minds, including the man that was in the cave and he was mentally unhinged. They weren't demon-possessed. There's no such thing as demons. There's no such thing as devils. So he was mentally ill, and he was brought back to his right mind. He healed a paralyzed man, and where it says they were vexed of the devil, the word's actually palsy. They were paralyzed. That's all it was. You look it up and it says paralyzed. And then he healed the woman who the physicians had failed to hear her and to help her. And then he healed a man of leprosy, and he laid hands on everyone that came to him, and he healed them. But in and of himself, he did not do that. He allowed the Spirit of God to work through him. So it was Father in him as him doing the works. Why would he point that out? Because he didn't want people to just bow down to him. He didn't want people to need him. He wanted to point the people to the Father. It's the Father that doeth these things. That's what he said. You know, I used to say a long time ago, we need to quit saying we don't do this. But the fact is, me by myself, ego, it means me, my, and myself, doesn't do this, but it's the Father in me as me. And I admit that I can go forth and do this, but it's the I exist in me that does this. Yes. Is that clear?
Yes.
So don't say that I can't go bring healing to people. You can, but you need to know what your source is.
Yes.
Okay? So he was more significant than physical life. He handled the power that was in him. Many places in the Bible it talks about if you have the Spirit in you. It's really, Paul, it's if you handle it. Because what good is it if it's in you and you don't handle it? You know, within me, is the ability to create art. I mean, you caught on very fast. It must have already been in you, right? And now it's just easy and it's simple. So we're handling it. We're using the tools and that it takes to create what we call a masterpiece. Maybe nobody else does, but I'm so excited. I sold that first abstract the other night in Chickasha, that one I called Reviving the Lost City. The lady just had to have it. But so Jesus understood what was in him, and he handled what was in him. Most of our life, we said, Christ is in us, or Jesus is in us. Well, what good just to go say that all the time, right? And we always did that. And then the Bible says, if that same Spirit. And it always put if. And it doesn't mean if, it means since. Yes. Since that Spirit that was in Jesus, that raised him from the dead, dwells in you. Not if it dwells in you, since it dwells in you. It does. There is no if with Father. It does dwell in you. Yes. Speak loudly.
Well, I was going to say, a lot of people got hung up on manifestation.
Right.
That word, manifestation, which means experiencing those things. Can you explain? Well,
we had a lot of people did, but one of my associate pastors, every time she ministered, she was always saying, I want manifestation, I want manifestation. Well, the truth is we already are the manifestation. So when I say I want manifestation, I deny that I am the manifest Son of God, right? And so we can have all kinds of things that we think is manifestation, like I got a raise, I won the lottery, I got healed, all those things. Those are temporal, right? So the manifestation to me is we are people that do not live in the need realm. We don't walk around with a need conscious. We don't walk around with a mortal conscious. Paul said this mortal, this immortal, or this liable to die must put on immortality. We must know that even physical death, it really doesn't stop our life. We continue to live on and on and on. So, but yeah, people want manifestation, and that's why they get attracted to big revivals where people are prophesying over people and healing people and all kinds of stuff are declared that's taking place, and they think that's a manifestation. I've heard people say, boy, God really manifested today in service. It's because they saw things. Is that what you're talking about, baby?
Well,
you want to add to it?
Compared to what you were just talking about the, I don't know, I can't, my train of thoughts.
All the healings that he did?
No, just the Spirit being in us.
Right.
Using the tools we already
It's
have.
more important that we know
Right.
that.
Than
He's
to
always-
get something.
Huh?
Than to get something. Have
Well,
something happen. So
yeah.
all right. So again, he was much greater than his physical life. And he did all that because he knew that he could, but that's not what he wanted to do. He raised people from the dead, and he also raised himself from the dead. And there are also many other things the Bible says that he did that if the books were written, the world couldn't contain them. I mean, he did much more than what we see in our Bibles. So we know at conception of a child, there is a quickening takes place. It's a quickening, or it's an interpenetration of life into that child. And that life is eternal life, which sustains and vitalizes its entire being, so much so that we call it a life-giving spirit. So why would I need a life-giving spirit? Well, because the life just continues to flow. It doesn't come in me and lay dormant unless I allow it to. But the life is to flow, and we're to literally give it out of us. Everywhere we go, we are to breathe the breath of life into our world. And you don't have to tell them you're doing it. You can just, in your thoughts, you just say, I breathe breath into this situation. I breathe divine wisdom and divine understanding into this situation, whatever it is. And so the life is eternal. The life sustains. The life revitalizes. If we allow it to, it keeps us whole. And that's how much dunamis power is within you. When you look up the word power, it says dunamis. We've all heard that taught before, but it's a very powerful. So according to the correct translation of Genesis 1:26 and 27, where it talks about let us create man in my image and all that stuff, or our image, it actually says, saith God, become man as a representative figure in resemblance and decided, declared, and decreed, and have dominion over. And I'm not going to read all that, but over all the earth. Verse 27, so created Father man as a representative figure in resemblance. Father created male and female to create Father in a body everlastingly. So every time a child is born, that child is born as the image of God. God has been born every time a child is born. That's kind of hard for people. But Elohim means God's in the ordinary sense. That would be us. We're not God Almighty, but we are just as God is, and we are spirit slowed down to visibility, right? And so we're on this planet to live. We're on this planet to give life and vitalize or energize those who have lost contact with their source. Just like I use light bulbs all the time. I just put a brand new light in that lamp over there, but it's not working. So what do? I check to see if it's plugged into the source. Well, the first source is in the wall. Well, it's still not working. Well, something's wrong. So I go up there and I screw it in. Something happened, it vibrated or whatever, and it came loose. I screw it in, the light comes on. Or the switch just doesn't in.
Okay.
So sometimes we need to check up from the neck up. What are you in contact with? What is it you think about the most? How much do you know about who you are? Right? Brother Garner used to say spiritual maturity is based on how much you know about what Jesus did. But I say it's based on how much you know about who you are and who your Father is. Right?
Yes.
Jesus never asked anyone to bow down and worship him. And yet every song we sing in churches today, every prayer, it's always worshiping Jesus and asking Jesus to do something. And Jesus came to be the greatest master, comforter, teacher there ever was. And he was. And so I am thankful for Jesus. I never disdain Jesus. I exalt him highly. Right? But guess what? I have some teachers that have shared with me that I exalt them very highly in my estimation. I appreciate what they've done for me. So we are comforter messengers. We're gifted to be givers, gifted to be servants, and we need to be needed, right? You ever met anybody that just doesn't feel like anybody needs them? That's a terrible life. But if you become a servant to all people like Jesus did, then you're needed because people need you. But what did he do? He humbled himself And it says he became a servant to all people. So because he had this servant mentality, he functioned in great authority above all earthly power. And Jesus was in tune with his breath. He was in tune with his divine mind. He was in tune with his spirit. He was in tune with his chi, if you want to say that. He was in tune with Father. I don't like to use the word God. God to me implies something that can mess you up or can bless you if you do right. So I've never liked the word God. So therefore, using his holy breath, think about that, using his holy breath enlarged his capacity to its perfect and complete expression. And I was going over this morning, and it just made me think about my breath, my air that I breathe. Our body functions on air, does it not? Without air, very quickly you'll be dead. And so that's why when somebody has a heart attack and their heart stops, they start pumping and pumping and pumping and breathing air into them, because you've got to have air. Even you can have blood flow, but if you don't have air, you won't live. You won't make it. And so the deeper breath I take and practice breathing deep breaths literally feeds my body and causes my organs to function better. And one of the things that I'm going through right now, I don't know if it was the surgery did it or what, but my breaths are real short. When I'm not consciously thinking about it, I take really small breaths. And so I'm practicing, and when I think about it, I start going, taking a deep breath and then letting it out, taking a deep breath. And you ever do that sometimes and you kind of get dizzy? Because you're getting a lot of oxygen to your brain, and we need it. So what would it be like if we let this same spirit that raised Jesus from the dead dwell in us and be comfortable within us? Then literally we become a perfect expression of a spiritual person. Now the outer sense man says the vitalizing force that was in Jesus is dead, and it's been dead for a long time, and it's decayed. That's what a lot of people think. Remember the movie God is Dead? A lot of people think that because they don't see what they want. They don't get what they think they should get every time they pray. But the keener knowledge of the spiritual man proclaims, "Awaken thou who sleepeth," because people sleep. Even Paul talked about that. He said, "Awake to righteousness." And the sin not is literally your no knowledge of God is the sin. And if I get there, it may be next week, but I translated that verse, and it's not talking about awake to righteousness and quit eating ice cream. The sin is not knowing the knowledge of God. That's what it really is. So the man who wants the inner life to spring forth must believe in the reality of spiritual powers. They must exercise faith and Father's faith by invoking in conversation the very presence of the Father in their life. The invisible, or the single eye, or the omnipresent Father. Father is in your life. Father is with us today and never leaves us, in us, as us. So exercising this faith reveals the consciousness, the glory of life, the spiritual life, and the soul is witness the power that it knew not. And when I say in the soul, I'm still talking about we are made up, we're not made up of a body and a soul that needs to get saved and a spirit. We are soul, we are spirit, we are breath, they're all the same. So anytime you read those, they're all the same. So there's no lack in the cool of the day walk. So where do we walk every day? It's what we have to think of. When we get up in the morning, where are we really going to walk? Well, I'm going to Brahms. I know you're going to Brahms, but where are you going to walk? Because walk means your way of life. Walk is how you dwell, the walk of life that you live in. And that's what happened to Adam. The Bible said that Adam walked with God in the cool of the day. And then when he began to listen to the teachers of the knowledge of good and evil, he identified that and he left that. And that's when Father came and said, "Where are you, Adam?" He wasn't looking for him physically. He wasn't lost physically. Father knew where he was, hiding behind a tree. But he was saying, "Where are you? You're not here anymore. You're not in this cool of the day." Yes?
He said, "What are you thinking?"
Yeah, that's your thinking, your thought process. He believed a lie. So there's no lack there, and when we conceive this and we understand this, then it governs our actions. It governs our ideas, and the inventor mentally when I was thinking about this, when When somebody's invented some kind of machine, Larry, that he knows it's going to work, but it's not there yet, right? Sometimes it takes years or to do that work, but in his mind, he knows it's real. He knows it's going to work. So the spiritual mind would take advantage of spiritual laws. And this ideal stimulates the appearance of what we seem to lack in our lives. And so what we want to do is visualize the idea that Father has for us. When Father created us, was there any disease in us?
No.
Was there age? No. I mean, even physically, some people lived 800-900 years before their lack of belief took them out. It took that long sometimes. But we visualize, what did Father have for us? And Scripture tells us that we'll just dig it out. And then when we connect that with spiritual life, then it becomes a process, and we give power to it beyond the sense imagination. Because our imagination was given to us to imagine the things of Father. But we've had all kinds of vain imaginations, haven't we, Lily? And Paul says to cast those down. Casting down vain imaginations is not binding and hollering and screaming and all that. It's speaking the truth. Yeah, I've been thinking that I'm old, but I'm not. My real person is not old. I've been thinking that my life is coming to an end, but it's not, because I'm in the ageless one. I have an unending life. Now, I'm not standing here telling you that my body's never going to die. But I believe if we started out believing this way, I believe we wouldn't look old at all. I believe we wouldn't have a lot of the diseases that we've had if we started out this way, if we had parents that know what we know today, just what we know today, and they taught that to us and they kept us away from religion teachings. I believe we would be in a different position today than we are right now. I don't hear any shouting or hollering or anything. So what do? Do we work? Yeah. Not labor, not try to please God, but we work strenuously in vibrating this inner life to the surface. We allow it to come forth to the surface and allow it to be our guiding life. People unaffected by religiosity find it easy, under proper instruction, to quicken various life centers of their life. There are people in the Middle East that's been around for years, and people in the past, they learned how to meditate and how to let the life of God flow through them. And they talk a lot about vibrations and energy. Did we ever hear that in church? Never. But spirit is energy. The very universe is full of God's energy everywhere, and we have no idea. But we quicken these various life centers in the body, and we connect them like a vibrating body battery, if you would, and it directs, or the spirit guides it, and it throws a current of energy to any place that we need it to be. So literally, I can speak to my heart, and I do. I can speak to my liver, and I do. I can speak to my mesenteric organ. I do. I speak to my nervous system, because they tell me that's where the amyloid's at. So I speak to it, and I speak that the very Spirit of God in me swallows all those things up, and my liver becomes whole, and it stops producing those mutated amyloids. And I'm by faith, I'm speaking to it. Yes. And the body has to obey, right? Yes. Because the body's source is the divine mind. So if I'm in agreement with Father, then I speak what I agree with. And I'm going to keep doing it, and I'm going to keep doing it. Yes. And I believe it restores us, and it will take us from that liable to die mentality to just Zoe life, and that's just living. So most people would like,
God life.
God life, Zoe, God life. So most people, I put my clock down here now so I can see it. Most people would like something in their body quickened, right? Something physical, or could be finances, It'd be nice to have your finances quickened, or your relationships quickened, life come back to something. However, if we would allow the revitalizing to take place in our conscious awareness, we would realize that what we think we need has already been quickened. It was quickened the day that you were conceived. All of the Spirit of God that you're ever going to have is already in you. You don't need any more, because you are spirit. You are breath. You are the perfect image of God. No matter what people see with their physical eyes, you are the perfect image of God. I believe with all my heart, if we begin to see with our single eye, the Bible talks about a single eye. This is not something strange. It's the third eye. And the people in the Middle East call it the third eye, the pineal gland. If we begin to see that way, we will see people. We will see the energy of God around us. We will see the glow of our Father. You ever heard people say that they've seen somebody minister and it was like they were glowing? It's because you were really tuning into your spirit. Do we have to see people that way all the time? No, but I think we need to see through what we see physically and see people who they really are. That they're altogether lovely, they're beautiful, they're holy. And so let's see a good example of quickening. It's in the story of the pool of Bethesda. It's John 5:2, and I'll just read it to you. It says, "Now there is at Jerusalem by the sheep market a pool called in the Hebrew tongue Bethesda, having 5 porches, and in these lay a great multitude of impotent folk, blind, hot, withered, waiting for the moving of the waters." And I didn't say important, I said impotent. Depending on where you live, it could be impotent for important. But allegorically, these 5 porches picture the 5 sense limitations. If you live by senses, you are limited, right? If you live how you feel, how you taste, how you touch, how you smell, you're limited. And one good example is how many of you have children that are grandchildren that you present food to them and they say, "Nah, I don't like that." And you say, "Have you ever tasted it?" "No, but I don't like it." So their senses limiting them, right? And my little Ethan, we try to help him with that. And many times I've got him to taste it. And sometimes he goes, "Yummy," right? So if he lived by his senses, he would miss out on that. So much so that one day he was looking at Emma's treat that's mainly cheese and stuff. And he wanted to know what it was. And I said, "Well, that's Emma's treat." And he goes, "Ooh." And I said, "Oh, it tastes good. It's cheese. She loves it. I double dare you to eat it." And so he grabbed it and he did. And he goes, "Oh, this is so good." About 5 minutes later, he said, "Papa, the aftertaste is horrible." But those are good examples how we are limited by our senses, correct? And so, excuse me, the 5 sense conscious does not realize the power of I exist in them to quicken their inner functions, to cause man's organism to not be weak, to not be limited, to cause the cells or allow the cells to do what they're supposed to do. But when you live out of a sense realm, your cells accumulate and they burden the system and they don't do what they're supposed to do. But I forget what it is, but don't we reproduce ourselves every so many years? Your cells replace if you're healthy and if you're doing what you're supposed to. What is cancer? Anybody know what cancer really is? It's cells growing too quick. In that area, the cells begin to populate too quick, and then that's what cancer is. And it begins to destroy the organs that around it. And so we can literally and should be speaking to every system in our body and declare over it that you are the creation of God and you were created perfect, and I see you perfect. And I speak to you to be perfect because you are perfect, right? You know, in the Bible it says, "Be holy for I am holy." Well, it's basically be holy because you exist holy. You are holy, so be who you be, like Brother Garner says. So what happens, it's necessary for all the purification. I read this in the science stuff, so I don't know this by officially, but all the purification and renewing of the depleted corpuscles in our body to occur through the lungs when man understands the power of I exist. Literally the breath of God, not just oxygen, but we allow the breath of God to flow through us like it be flowing through our lungs. And what happens? That oxygen, the breath of God, flows through our blood. And so spiritually there's a flowing. And when that same spirit that raised Christ from the dead, that same spirit flowing through you will take care of your organs. Will stop the aging process possibly. And I believe it would. Because I don't believe we have to age either. But we do, because we believe that we're liable to die. we'll say, oh, I'm 60 years old. I'm getting close to the end of life. How many of you thought that way before? Larry hasn't. I know, but people do think that way, and it feels like it, but that's a sense. And well, I've got all these diseases. That's your senses, correct? You're not denying it, but you defy it by repeating within yourself and knowing what Father says about you, and Father created you to live.
That's the truth.
Right? So the I exist in you declares the word of activity. The word of activity, the word that functions, the word that penetrates or interpenetrates your entire soul and every organ inside of you. And Jesus at that pool, that man was laying there, and there were people all around that pool. And at the certain time, it was thought that the angel of the Lord stirred the pool, and whoever got in was healed. Well, this guy couldn't get in, and nobody was there to help him. So did Jesus tell him to go get in the pool? Did he pick him up and go put him in the pool? No, he did not. He said, arise, take up thy bed, and walk. He didn't touch him. He didn't do anything. He just told him to rise, take up your bed, and walk. Thus we see that the work of Holy Breath is not confined to physical processes. Does that make sense? So, if your lung capacity is not equal to this purification of your blood, it increase it by declaring the law of active life, even physically. If your lung's not working, if your doctor tells you your lung is not functioning properly, then you literally can decree the law of active life to your lung, and it has to listen. And I know some people are saying, well, be the proof. Well, I'm doing it, and I'm believing for it. I'm decreeing the law of life to my liver. I'm decreeing the law of life to my mesentery organ, to my brain, to my heart, literally to every part of my being. When I lay down in bed at night, I rehearse at night, and I do this in my thoughts, and I'm speaking it and speaking it. Well, how long are you going to do it? I'm just going to keep doing it. And I also thank Father that it's alive in me.
Yes.
Because Father's Spirit lives in me. And so anemic blood may be vigorous and viral, but we can speak to our lungs to produce the oxygen that my blood needs. Is that what anemic blood is? Your lack of oxygen? Okay. So we can speak to our lungs, and there can be a perpetual flow of Zoe life, more than just oxygen, but Zoe life flowing through me and bringing life to me. So what do? We command these life centers to do our will. Our will is inspired by our spirit, not our senses. Correct? There's a difference. But my will is Father's will. And Father's will is what? That we live. He created man to live. So, in closing here, I'll finish the next week. Don't be limited by so-called established laws of nature. That this is it. 80, 90 years old. Don't be limited by that. Don't be limited by, well, I don't have enough money, so I can't make it. When you get retired, you always hear, and today they say you need at least $1 million in the bank to make it. Well, do we, Donna? We don't have $1 million in the bank. We don't have anywhere near that at all. But we were given assurance by our Father that if I would let go of my abilities that I had in the furniture industry or any other abilities and trust Him as my source, I would never lack for money the rest of my life. It was something that needed to be said to me that started me down my path of ministry. And when I finally said, okay, I give it up, we went an entire year on workman's comp, making $247 a week, and I was making about $120,000 a year. We never lacked one penny, and we never have since then. And nobody gave us large amount of monies. It was just always there when we needed it. In fact, at the end of the year, when I was getting ready to get off from workman's comp, they were releasing me. I had this thought of, you still kind of think that a little bit. But I'd sold insurance for a long time for Great Southern Life, and they sent me a 1099 for $800 and something. And I knew I hadn't been paid, so I called them, and they said, oh, Mr. Richmond, that's a mistake. Don't worry about it. Well, they sent it to IRS. They had to. So I called back and I asked for, Larry's been in insurance, haven't you? So I called back and asked for agents' commission services. And the guy started looking and said, Mr. Richmond, did you call us and tell us to stop giving your renewals? I said, no. And he said, about 10, 15 years ago, they stopped doing it. We owe you money. So I'm thinking we're going to get $800 something. Well, guess what? We got like $2,700 showed up. Well, some people say, well, that was yours already. Yeah, it was mine. But guess what? Everything I need is mine. Or everything that's required, not need, but everything required is mine already. And we had those experiences that entire year. We never lacked, and we never have since then whatsoever. Yes?
You can't claim it unless you know it's there.
That's right. You got to know it's there, and you got to believe it. And I believe Father spoke to me specifically, and I heard Father's voice. And I'm telling you, you can too. You can hear it in every area of your life. If there's something you're worried about, if there's something that you don't think you have enough of, get off by yourself and get quiet and say, Father, I know that I have everything that I need because you instructed your servants to tell me that. And I ask that you make that a reality to me. And then just be calm and quiet and listen. We don't have to plead. We don't have to scream. We don't have to holler. We don't have to demand. We don't have to rebuke. We just come quietly and calm and believe and just listen. And you'll hear a word that's just for you. Father didn't tell me to tell you that about money. It could be your health. It could be anything. But what we want to get to where it applies to everything, we don't worry about anything whatsoever. Wouldn't that be wonderful? And we can. So don't limit yourself.
He has provided.
Divine life takes no understanding of the laws of the intellect whatsoever. Divine life is not governed by that which is physical, that which is carnal. Life is active. It's constantly present in all its fullness and all of its power, and it has no end whatsoever. So I'm speaking again to all my organs, and I speak to your organs, and declare this perpetual activity of life within each one of us. It is perpetual. It never stops. It's always there. My life is not dormant. That's a declaration. It, the Spirit of God, the fullness of Father, is in us. It's ever active. It's able to do exceedingly abundantly above all that I speak it to do. Why did I put myself I? Because I exist. Right? So what I speak is what Father would say. And that's why we need to guard over our mouth. We don't want to say what Father doesn't say. We don't want to do what Father hasn't done. We don't want to see what Father doesn't see. We need to see ourselves just like we see other people, that we're perfectly holy. So quickening life and vitalizing is an inflow of divine vitality into our awareness. It changes our awareness. Lily, when you went to church and you went down and got saved, you did not need to get saved. You needed your awareness saved.
Yes.
Right? Yes. We needed to be rescued from all that we were taught and all that we believed. And so this eternal awareness is incorruptible, and it's not subject to death, and it's not subject to corruption. So the original quickening took place in your soul at your conception, and it's there forever and forever and forever. And you right now are full of life. Sure. Full of it. It's running over, if you would. And that's why we are life-giving spirits. What is a battery? It's an energy-giving battery, right? It gives out energy, and all something has to do is connect to it, and there actually is a two-way flow. What needs it draws it out, and it releases it, and it's perpetual, and it keeps going and keeps going. Just kind of like a car, it has a generator. If that generator is okay, it'll just keep powering up that battery. Well, we have the most awesome generator there ever was, and it's the divine life of God inside of us. Amen. So I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you'll come back for part 2 next week. We love you guys. We bless you. This will be on saved on Facebook, and those that come by YouTube, I'll put it on YouTube for you. Thanks for being here.